Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's good to be with you. I hope that God is moving in your life in amazing ways. In this video, I want to talk to you about COVID crazies. You heard of that? I'm sure you have. COVID crazies. Just the craziness that has accompanied this pandemic. And I'm thinking of, right now, of impulse buying that has gone on during this pandemic. I was reading recently of someone who was on a Zoom call and saw in the commercial a tent for a cat. A tent for a cat. And she had to buy it so that the cat had an outdoor tent to lay around in. Did you know that roller skate sales are 12 times more than what they were before? And we all remember the toilet paper crisis. Pools are up as well. Some people have already booked into next year. You can't find an outdoor swimming pool these days. Cars, RVs, alcohol sales, all these things have gone up. These impulse COVID crazy decisions. I mean, with COVID, stress and anxiety have gone up, right? They now say a third of Americans have clinical anxiety or clinical depression because of all the stuff that's going on. They did a sleep study, and in the sleep study they found that 80% of the people had these wild and crazy dreams, as they described it, of being attacked by bugs or other things that they associated with the virus coming after them. And what they shared is this is normal in areas where there's trauma and disaster. I mean, think about all the things that are going on that are leading to the stress that lead to COVID crazies. There's the fear of the illness, of getting it, and the fear of the possibility of getting it. For some, there's job loss, and so they're dealing with less income and trying to figure out in this world, how are we going to make ends meet? There's the physical and social isolation that takes a toll. We are meant to be with others. There's loss in general of a way of life that we used to have. Loss of control, of being able to have that sense of, I can do this, I can do that. I mean, we're not even talking about all the other things that are going on in the world. Just think of the stress and anxiety that comes with COVID that I'm sure you might be feeling. Well, all of these things, all this stress, this anxiety, can lead to bad decisions, right? I'm not talking about impulse buys, but bad decisions that have big consequences to them. Just ask David. I want to read to you a story of David and reflect on it just a little bit and ask us to think about it as we make decisions in our life these days. In 1 Samuel 26, we have David is on the run. He's already been anointed by Samuel. He's already made his way up in the army, and Saul is now out to kill him. And he's been on the run for a while, and we now have the second time that David spares Saul's life. In this story, Saul and his army are sleeping, and David and one of his other soldiers sneaks into camp, takes the spear, takes the water bottle, and walks out and calls Saul. And Saul recognizes that he was at the mercy of David. And this is what he says after David and Saul speak. Saul said to David, "Blessed be you, my son David. You will do many things and will succeed in them." What's clear is that God has been protecting David all along. You can see this in the studies, that wherever Saul goes, he thinks he can find him. David eludes him, that God's protecting him. And here's another example of this. And Saul finally admitted, wherever you go, God will succeed. Now listen to what David does next. 27:1. Then David said in his heart, "Now I shall perish one day by the hand of Saul." What? God just protected you. But now he's saying in his heart, "Now I shall perish one day at the hand of Saul." Who was telling David that? Was it his own fears and stress of being in the situation? And so here's the decision he makes. There's nothing better for me than that I should escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will despair of seeking me any longer within the borders of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand. David was in a stressful situation. He was overwhelmed. He's on the run. His life is not the same. He's had all this loss. He's wondering, God, what are you doing? And he makes a bad decision. He makes a bad decision because he forgets God's promises, that God has already promised that he will be the future king. He's been anointed by Samuel. Jonathan, just a few chapters before this, who is Saul's son, goes to David while he's in hiding and saying, you will be king. You, not me, because Jonathan would be the next in line, will be the next king, and I shall be right beside you. And Saul, my father, knows that. You see, David forgot the promises of God. But not only did he forget the promises of God, he lost sight of all the ways that God had protected him. I mean, here was another example just a little bit before of how God protected him each and every step of the way, because God is true to his promises. But David gave in to the stress of the moment and made a bad decision. He thought in his heart that I better do something about this. And didn't buy something, didn't buy a pair of roller skates. But he made a decision that had deep consequences. Because he made a decision to go to the enemy, to live within the enemy's borders, to fight for that enemy, and he would be fighting against his fellow Israelites that he was leading at times. He was also saying, in a way by his decisions, that he doesn't believe that God will protect him anymore. And then he lost the respect of the men. And it says here that the men followed him with this, but in a few chapters later, where David and his army, his new army, is there with the Philistines, well, his home gets raided and everyone's captured. Well, the men turn on him. Why? Because they're like, you made the decision to go over here. We were with you no matter what. And in that, David almost loses his family as well. I mean, it was a costly decision. And yet God was still with him. But can I just caution you on the stressing and anxiety that you are feeling, that we are all feeling, and not to make rash, impulse decisions? So here's what I'd like you to do. I first want you to slow down. When we get into a moment where there's this intensity or this stress or this anxiety, we need to slow down what we're doing. Can I invite you to take time every day to just be quiet before God? Set a timer. I set a timer for 3 minutes just to be quiet before God, to sit before him and say, I'm here. You are king. I am not. Wait on your decisions. Don't make rash decisions. Because remember, we have all these things going on, and where we could do this, we could fall into the trap like David. So first, slow down. Then I want you to think. I want you to really think about things. Why would you want to do something? Why would you want to buy that? Do you really need it? Or is this because you feel like this will make me feel better? Or if you feel like I got to go over here, analyze it. Why do I feel this way? Is it because I'm trying to control a situation because everything else is out of control? So sit some time and think, and why are you making decisions? Remember, slow everything down. Then discuss things with friends. One of the things that I've noticed in my life is that when I get stressed, when I get anxious, when I get overwhelmed, I'm not the best decision maker. Because these emotions are clouding my thinking, and so at times like that, I need friends, I need others who aren't going through it to help me think through it, because I to be honest, I just don't trust my decisions. And so I want you to do the same, to discuss things with friends before you do it, to really analyze where is this coming from? Do you think that this is a wise decision, or do you think that this is something that is just I'm caused by my stress? We are going to get through this. But one of the ways that we're going to get through this is to recognize where the stress and anxiety that we are feeling is coming from. And to be deliberate in our following God in those things. I mean, God is beside you. God is protecting you. God is present in your life. And we don't need to think of all the other things, but focus on God. So, may God bless you in your decision making. May you slow down and be with Him. Allow Him to guide you. Wait on Him. Because He will guide you, because He's never stopped. And we will get through this. May God bless you. See you soon.